So I've introduced John Marcus Powell many times over the years for various readings and book launches, and the same challenge always arises: how to describe his writing style to someone unfamiliar with it. His performance style, well, that's perhaps easier to capture in descriptive terms. This time I'll just say that it's a combination of the Shakespearean and the burlesque, both highbrow and lowbrow. And anyone who has seen one of his budget horror film performances knows that he can act up a storm no matter what the context. And anyone who has eavesdropped on one of our stoned and drunken evenings on my porch upstate knows that he can tell a story like no one else. And Black Uncle is a story, an autobiographical one. But every good storyteller knows that fiction and truth are mischievous bedfellows, and trying to separate them is a fool's errand. Let's face it, we all live and labor under our illusions. Some would say, reductively, under our delusions. But an artist embraces imagination with a faith that transforms even the most mundane of details into things somehow mythic. We had once a better relation to myth than we do in our current, more journalistic climate, and the stories we once told ourselves were not considered suspect if they boldly distilled the essence of experience. What John Marcus has managed to do here is to meld the individual, the transient, with the often erotically charged eternal to reach a truth that is far more powerful than the mere facts. All this while weaving a whopping good yarn. In the process, he manages to be both a journalist and a mystic. The rhythm of the writing, made crystal clear when he is reading it aloud himself, can be somewhat disconcerting on the page. For this writer often glances to one side or another and then runs off in pursuit of various peripheral associations that breach the strictures of space and time, until he runs out of breath with an elegant and often outlandish flourish and then returns to his primary narrative. For me, it is mesmeric to be swept off into the meanders of his perceptual design, to be lifted out of my own world into his, and then to discover that such a world belongs, after all, to all of us. Of course, I am still dissatisfied with this, my attempted portrait of his work. But then if it could be described accurately, it would have little need to exist on its own. It could be replaced by its explanation, a common enough state of affairs in our statistically obsessed culture. It's a rule in some schools of poetry that if it can be paraphrased, it isn't really a poem. And as well as being a story, Black Uncle is a poem. One can say what it is about: the experiences of a Welsh boy during World War II, the experiences of a Welsh boy during World War II, the experiences of his mother dating a Black American soldier in a society in which racism is arguably innocently ingrained, and her son's equally illicit sexual awakening, but that doesn't get to the heart of the matter. Yet, writes Gillian Coe in his blurb for the book, in the midst of great deprivations in a tiny Welsh village, Powell celebrates the growth of, quote, exuberant weeds, extravagant Brussels sprouts, unquote. One has to go there with John Marcus. One has to let his eye lead one on through the underbrush. One has to surrender to his brutally elegant voice. And that is precisely what I intend to do right now, without further ado, as I give you John Marcus Powell and his friend from Seattle, Lynn Compton, to read from his 4th volume for EXOT Books, Black Uncle.
Well, thank you, Nemo. It's always so difficult to live up to that introduction. And thank you, everybody, for coming and for making this reading part of your weekend. I'd like to thank Nemo for editing and for encouraging and for thinking Black Uncle worthy enough to print. Then I'd like to thank Julio, yes Julio, for taking care of the book's design and for his witty drawings which complement the text. Also Murray Simpson, whose birthday it is today. The cover of the book is taken from his paintings, and we've been friends for 50 years, so it's wonderful to work on this together. Also my great friend Lynn Compton, who's travelled from Seattle to read the part of the mother. I'm going to read the boy in part 1, and Lynn is going to read the mother in part 2, and then again I'm going to read the boy in part 3. It should take about 50 to 60 minutes. And I think we're not going to be able to really give you a sense of the narrative. It's about a third, we'll be reading about a third of the poem. But what we hope to give you is a sense of the mood and of the general rhythm of the work. So okay, here we go for the first airing public reading of Black Uncle. I am a little kid, and I climb a tree. There are all manner of trees in the village, which I get up on afternoons, like the hollow tree in the hut ground, the pleasure ground, called hut ground because of the hut at its centre, where were held festivities. But that hollow tree, it's such an easy tree, that once up, you'd think you'd done nothing. This one is different. It's a tall elm covered in ivy. The first branches a long way from the ground. I claw my way up, muttering, it's too much for a boy of my age to have the necessary know-how. But if it has to be done, it has to be done. The tree stands in the hedge of our back garden. We have another garden at the front. Front garden swoops down to the church and the village fields. Back garden slopes up a bank. On one side the cow meadow, on the other side the village street. Behind on the back side our little house. Our little house wants to wander, but man has given it instructions to stay put. On the street side, a stretching to the school, and at the school a yearning for the main road. Along that main road march world armies. Could be our boys, could be Italian Italians, might be Nazis. Across the road, among the hills, incestuous villages. Incestuous is getting wild among the trees with too many animals. That definition endures. Once up to the first branches, to the left in Di Evans Meadow, I see the limpid, patterned, show you my arse to see poops blattering. Eyes looking for friendship, cows. Static, unlike the street the other side of me, which runs eternally till it turns left at the school. At the school I'm learning why right is right, why left is left, how is, how was is was. After the school, the street bends to the main road. Twice as wide as the village street, it deserves to be main, for when I stand at that junction waiting for the bus, potent is the tarmac, with convoys due to come, as well as the ones coming from my small past. If a convoy comes from the left, it's coming from the direction of the town. If it comes from the right, it's coming from the direction of my grand's house, 3 miles further on. If it comes from the direction of my grand's house, the drivers of the trucks and jeeps have to pass right through the King of Prussia pub. After getting drunk in the pub's dark rooms, they veer out against God's wishes, bouncing off the skies, passing the bus stop, where quiet women wait loudly for the bus. "They're English," says Mrs. Irish Pat, whose husband is at the front. And it's him that is Irish, not herself. Blonde, working at the town hospital. She's wearing a good shopping outfit because she's still young and she's going to go to market on the bus. My mum says, no, they're American. You don't get English trucks that high up. Oppie Pritchard, headmistress, with a dark limp and a brimmed hat, states categorically, they are trucks bringing the Italian prisoners of war home from the fields. Oh, those Italians, they know so much more than us about agriculture, what with their vines and rice. If getting up the tree had been difficult, getting down was desperate. I clutch at the trunk, too broad to be touchable, and the ivy, frailer than when I ascended, breaks off. I'm living in a huddle of scuffs and grazes, convinced that whatever I'm doing goes far beyond any notion of tree, of wall, of climb. To concentrate, all but the immediate must be forgot. The church and the river fields are easily forgotten, for they hide behind the house. The church and the river fields are easily forgotten, for they hide behind the house. Out of sight, they can't be grasped. And the river fields, with the railway line streaking over the river bridge for Cardiff, well, that's best left for Hitler. He's the man out to destroy all means of communication. He's the man who sends over his pilots in the night. I don't fall. I haven't fallen. As I descend, saplings in the hedge rise with leaves feathery. My anticipation is heavy. There's going to be a jump up the hedge, then a dance down the bank, then a run out the gate to get a drink of water from the tap, dribbling water onto the outsized stone placed under to adequately support water buckets of villagers with no inside tap who get their water from this tap in the street. But this jolt to come will never happen. The future weaves a different weave. The future tapestry has a more troublesome pattern. Remember, this is wartime. And in wartime, instead of toys, there's pain. My left leg strains down, and when the sole of the foot touches the ground, saplings in the hedge tickle calf and shin. Now I have only to bring my right leg from the tree, bring it down, to be back in the normal realm again. I start to do it. But my right leg doesn't disentangle. It stays stuck out at an angle. With determination remains. Something has happened to progress. I clutch at the ivy. Something has happened to motion. The leg stays static, apart from my body. Well, is it myself or the leg that's contrary? It's loose, yet strained. My hand goes under the leg. I'm getting too old for short pants to puzzle out this inertia. Why? Why? what has happened is this. In the middle of the hedge, an elder sapling 3 inches round has been cut down, and its end, shaved to the point of an arrow, is primed for the penetration of the underflesh of my young boy's thigh. My hand comes back with leaves clotted red. I try to grasp the idea of this penetration. I try to understand. My putty flesh is wounded, but I'm confounded because there's been no sensation. Ma'am! But I know that I'm impaled. Ma'am! That's my boy's soprano voice. I have a good singing voice. Ma'am! Now my voice is astonished at the hole in my flesh, forged with no pain. Ma'am! I've shrieked like that from the front garden at the attack of the snail, of the snaky worm, at the appearance of stark wild flowers in the paddock beyond that garden. Ma'am, there are flowers! More sudden the appearance of any wild animal. Ma'am! I scream. It is a wonder that man takes me seriously. But the back door opens quickly. Easy, boy, easy. Facing into Di Evans' meadow, I believe it is she that is holding me. Brave guy. I believe circumstances have given her a new tongue, a different vocabulary, so as not to cause alarm. 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 On the meadow side of me, hides of the milking cows are solid white with puddles. Colour of the puddles, dark ink and nature green. Their udders are full because they've been paid a visit by the bull. Bull is brought walking from Llanwenneth in the night. Hector and his father, each holding the end of a different rope attached to the bull's head, lead the bull through the village to their farm near the church. Near the graveyard, the bull has stalled to one side. Bull looks over the graveyard into the field where the lady cows await his visit. For he's here to put his dongy into their inside. If the lady cow wants a calf, he's going to leave his dongy in for a long time. But if it's just a question of milk, his dongy will just tickle her membrane. Membrane is the brain part of the belly, and tickling the membrane produces an excitement which produces milk. Milked into buckets by Jack Evans in the cow afternoon at 6 o'clock. All the while, on the street side of me, man is watching, which goes to prove that the hands, one at the end of the arm coming round me, the other showing its pale nails as it appears from the inside of my mess of a young boy's leg, are long hands and the long arms of a body viewing my predicament from close distance. Close distance is loving, long distance is mean. As the force in the hands struggles to raise me from the stick, my head lolls to the left, where the cows in the meadow know what is happening, then lolls to the right, past man, past the hedge, past the street, to the mountain stone wall of Di Evans' market garden. But both cows and market garden fade, till in the middle of being carried to the house, a voice that couldn't be man's tells me, "I'm carrying you around 'cause you were the king." Oh, let me take you. Look, there's blood all over your uniform. No, leave him to me. searching upward searching. At first, his smile, it's sharp like the lines in his nails. His smile is a glowing patch in his overall blackness. He is forged from blackness. His blackness is strength. His blackness is trepidation. All is trepidation as I linger over his black eyes, black nose, black forehead, black chin. He carries me along the path between the currant bushes, through the back door and into the kitchen. He lays me face down on the table. My injury takes up the entire house, yet leaves room for him. Ma'am is fetching a bucket of water, but not from the well at the bottom of the garden. She must be going to the street tap, because I hear the thud of the street gate. From the cupboard under the stairs, the black man carries towel and sheets. Then at the table he takes off my shoes. My table shoes are his meal. He is behaving as if he is in a familiar place. When you go back to school, fella, he puts his hands underneath my stomach. He's undoing my trousers. My trousers are tearing. When you go back to school, fella, you're gonna have plenty to tell your friends. The arrow of the sapling has entered my heart. I lie skewered. I'm a pig, killed by the pig killer who lives up the lane. Convergence of the banks makes that lane more like an alley. This pig killer is a hairy slaughterer who knows death. I know death. Uncle Ronnie killed in a plane crash. Trevor Williams, 14-year-old son of the school cook, drowned in the river, even as his family celebrated his birthday on the river banks. My grandmother, Uncle Ronnie's mother, trying to talk, but weeping, unable to leave her chair to cross the room to go to the window to see Uncle Ronnie's coffin. But to get to the church, his fine black hearse past her house. Also, Mrs. Williams, Trevor's mother, led through the village, away from that river, in the valley of the shadow. In the valley of the shadow, death is our scourge. Hey, they were my new trousers. You'll get your others. We got no money. I got money. You got money? Yeah. You tell your friends that you've got a buddy with a lot of money. How much? He made up a number. Told me to keep it to myself. Ma'am carries the great bucket of water into the kitchen, having lugged it all along the flagstone path. Flagstones in the kitchen, same colour as the bucket, peep from under Ma'am's homemade mat, stitched together from leftover scraps of carpet, filched from Mrs. Colonel Probert, which is where she works, looking after the children, up on the main road, just beyond the railway station. It's a farm residence, rich and smart. How is he? Oh, he's fine. He's gonna take a ride in an ambulance. Ever been in an ambulance, fella? No? Well, they'll carry you out on a stretcher and drive you away with lights flashing. I must go and phone, Mom says. Where are you phoning? Well, at the post office. It's on the main road, just beyond the King of Prussia. Well, what's that, the pub? Why don't you phone from the pub? No, Mum says, I can't phone from the pub. She hesitates. There's too many people about. The black soldier stands. He's wrapped one of our raggedy towels around his middle to protect himself from my blood. It spills. His hands hang. Yet his head doesn't hang. There come moments when it rises from his neck, and his neck rises from his back, and his hair, like he painted on. Except I watch it growing. His hair is growing. All the world around him, stock still.
They carried Timmy out to the buckled, bent-up ambulance. With doors open and engine humming, it was similar to a military vehicle, though out here in the country, it was peripheral to war. Ernie Wilson, driver, and Gus Barron, his assistant, used to live up the lane opposite the King of Prussia. Paid next to nothing as farm labourers, they tended gardens for a bit of extra cash. Living next door to each other, among the overgrown, there was a speculation concerning their leaving not an atom of time for anyone except each other. So they moved into Reese. A good move. With the war at full throttle, they were less talked of. Also, they got jobs at the secret ammunitions dump. This dump was a giant mound covered with grass in the midst of uninhabited country. We were supposed to think it was a mountain, clod earth on clod earth. How could that be? There were guarded gates and a drive leading up to vast doors cut deep into the mountain. What were we supposed to think was beyond these doors? Woolworths? It's still there. Grass better cut, drive and doors well cared for. War's end, wars begin. At this anti-place, somebody believes in the dire necessity of carrying on. The rules. Don't ask why Ernie and Gus have double the money. Don't ask about the little green bus that stops near the asylum and takes workers to nowhere. Believe Gus and Ernie's work was solely ambulance work, though war kept civilians healthy here in the country. Death occurred only in large cities, in large towns. Anyway, Gus and Ernie were not conscripted. Reasons could have been religious. They might have been Quakers, with their nature of belonging to themselves. They did belong to themselves. After we won the war, they managed the town cinema. Along the way, they both acquired wives. At some uncertain point, the wives died. Through the village, Ernie was not driving smoothly. Side roads were in poor condition, and there had been little concentration on the idea of seat springs. Later in the century, there are cars like boats, buses like ships, Mesmerized villagers later learn to sail down country lanes. Once on the main road, traveling was easier, for the surface had to be taut for convoys. Still, travel was slow in the late evening, early night, for headlights had only the strength of flashlights, their hooded beams directed at the immediate ground. "Nothing to worry about," shouted Ernie back over his own head. "We'll be there in a jiffy." But the planes were so close, we could hardly hear him. They might have been coming to kiss us. In the woods, along the lanes. We pulled up to the curb, hiding beneath the branches of an overwhelming tree. On the left, we were just past the railway station. On the right, we were just before the drive to Mrs. Colonel Probert's, which is where I worked. Beyond Ernie's head, through the windscreen, appeared a rabbit. This paddock, on all sides wooded, belonged to Mrs. Colonel Probert, and was full of rabbits cursed with short lives. A way out of the general predicament was to be shot in the heart, put in a stew, and shattered out. This particular rabbit, singly on its hind legs, was a lesson in boldness, plunged out of darkness, plunged out of quietness by our headlights and by the planes. "He just went off then, did he?" Ernie was talking about Hank. I'd told them I'd had help from a black soldier who happened to be passing. No idea as to the soldier's name. If Timmy remembered Hank when he woke up, I'd meet the moment by asking Gus, "Why do you tie your raincoat belt so tight? Is it to remind Ernie of your tiny waist?" My method was to knock gossip deep in the mire before another question escaped. "He didn't want no thank yous?" "No, he carried Timmy into the house and went off without a by your leave." "They're strong," said Gus, coming to sit next to me on the cot across from Tim. "Yeah, and they've got good hearts." This conversation had as much to do with implications of the sultry as it had to do with Hank. "Treat them right and they'll treat you right," Ernie whispered over his shoulder. "They're just like everybody else." I said, "It was good of him to help. Timmy might have died." "Who wouldn't want to help a woman as pretty as yourself?" "They love white women. They've got this monstrous equipment between the legs, and when they get started, they can't stop." I grinned, because not to grin would only have encouraged Gus's smut. "Gus," remonstrated Ernie, "Mrs. Tyler doesn't want to know anything about that." "I'm not saying nothing that shouldn't be said. We don't want our women getting hurt, that's all." The sound of the planes had lessened. "They aren't Jerry's," said Ernie. "They're owls looking for Jerry's." "We've been told they're expecting an attack on the dump." "I'm glad we don't work there," he added. "I'll say," said Gus. Ernie considered it safe now to restart the engine, so again we were off to the hospital in an ambulance full of proclamations concerning dimensions and fertilization and lust. Hank is formed well enough, and when we learned what others expected, we enjoyed shared amusement, shared shock. First off, He was shy, undressing so close up to me I was able to see nothing. To get a good look, every time he took off his clothes, I'd move back. And realizing just what I was doing, he'd go to the other extreme. Oh, if I had friends, I'd have loved them to watch him parading. His parading was serious play. Me, I'm modest. In my heart, I used to be. At the beginning, going out with my husband Wilfred, I was afraid to tell him when I needed to pee. But with Hank, I became so advanced. One day, I didn't wear underclothes. As I lifted my dress up and up, he got so much pleasure, he had to go me one better. And he ran out the door naked, saying, "I'll be back in 2 minutes." He returned an hour later, claimed in the night there was no one to see him. And if they did, it was his outline only, 'cause his blackness was blacker than the dark. "You can't say that," I warned him. "La-di-das don't sleep at night, 'cause they sit on their bums all day." Dr. Corner, the parson, head full of sermons, belly full of wine, might get up from bed and go out into the fields. If he made out a naked black man, he'd never return to my house to have our little talks. He'd come to the door, knock too strongly to suggest he was God. I'd already told him straight I couldn't believe in a God that allowed young men to die on the battlefield. Couldn't believe in a God that allowed my lovely young brother to die in his play. He mumbled something about this being man's fault, not God's, nor his, nor mine. After my divorce scandal, he never came to talk anyway. If I'd known my divorce was going to happen, I would have told Hank to go out, stitch stock. Whenever he was so inclined, I would have said, "Take a bucket, water from the tap at the stone beside the street wants to run in the crevice between your buttocks. The crevice between your buttocks is a respite from the acreage of your black ass." Who told you the water likes my crevice? Water. Water thinks. Water talks. But then, certain moments, we needed to be quieter. Quieter is sane. Now I'm old. I go to the mirror, arrange strips and wisps of my white hair. I pull myself together for all the others. These days, I don't see them. These days, I'm blind. In the war days, with my hair in a roll, I'd go into town and walk around. I'd ask the butcher, "Well, Mr. Price, what have you got?" "Strips of shredded pork, Mrs. Tyler." "Let me have a look," I'd say. "What do you reckon?" "Oh, Mr. Price," I'd say, "I could never think of anything to do with that." I'd use the accent of Mrs. Colonel Probert, causing the town to believe me a top. My hair was rolled round an elastic band when there was one available. When there wasn't, I'd go out with my hair falling, the naturalness of the wave pronounced. Mrs. Colonel Probert had nice hair. And if the news said, no oil raids expected, she'd go off into Cardiff and have it bobbed. She knew how to walk. She knew how to stop. When she stopped, her muscles took a breath. When she was tired, her muscles sobbed. Tantalizing to watch her. In her garden, stooping down to cut parsley, or in the kitchen, instructing the cook. She herself was going to prepare lunch for the children, boiled eggs and parsley sauce. When it was prepared, she leaned across the nursery table to serve them. Her leaning was elegant as the ornate plaster ceiling, built too high to show off its animals. Her children asked, "'Tis it that's up there, Mummy? Plaster lambs and ravens? Plaster lambs and doves?" The nursery was one of the smaller rooms on the ground floor at the back of the house. I had to pass by to get to the kitchen, making sure that from door to door I kept close to the wall where windows look out onto the cow shit, a mountain of manure, and the land girls collecting cans, milk cans, full in the dawning, were returned empty at dusk. Servants were instructed never to look at the gentry. We were never to look into the nursery where she sat at the table with her children, opening a letter from her husband, who, like Wilfred, was in North Africa, though she had no need to be anxious. Her husband was one of the big shots. His father, an army big shot before him. His grandfather, a big shot before that. Big shots come back. The white 5-bar gate, the drive, the house were lonely, confident and lonely as we passed by in the ambulance. Mrs. Colonel Probert went to bed early, asleep, teased by the Sphinx. She'd be fingering herself in her antique bed, in her antique house. The Sphinx was coming over from Egypt. The Sphinx was of uncertain sex. So in her dream, she was adamant. "Whatever you do, bring along your equipment. Get to Paddington Station early, and 'cause there's only one train." As we got into Reese, Ernie was calm, driving without spurts. No street lamps, windows covered with blackouts, headlights shielded. Traffic just wasn't. Just a tiny bit of traffic, that is. Shapes of mountains, churches, pubs, of the asylum, of the town hall, bulked over us. Yet in the dark, young men loom bright. Hank lay in a white cloud, which accentuated his blackness. Hector sat on a skulking dark cloud because he was white. Boys stretched out their arms from the rooftops. A group of young women were squeezed up in a huddle down by the river in front of a cave. Hank and Hector were in their underpants. Wartime underpants were made of a material constructed less to cover up flesh than to contain. Languid hair covering their calves was a come-on. Also, the bulge of the crotch, the large knob of the masculine knee.
hospital that amounts to shapes just about connected. Rotund fish in oblong pond, square car belonging to a long doctor parked in the driveway, sharp rectangular door in rectangular hall, and all of this painted vein grey. Uncle Hank, last face remembered before I came here, would be able to arrange territory of village to territory of hospital, so that my confused isolation might bloom into a bouquet. But whenever I mention his name, Mam's face goes crazy. A forbidden finger to her lips conveys Hank's name must never be revealed in any untoward expression. Words that come out of me must never include his name. But now, Phil Watkins is out in the village, neither to drink water from the village tap, nor to walk the streets. He's out and about in the middle of the village, waiting for me to leave my dim morning origin and share the afternoon of this short, vivid day. I come along with a desire to escape loneliness. Loneliness is my scourge. It darkens the water, darkens my days. Hello, Timmy. Do you want to play football? Yeah, but my leg has been hurt. Oh, I know. A stick went into it, but it's healing. All right, then let's play. Tim, Phil holds a tough brown ball. He lets the ball drop, kicks the ball sideways to sideways to delight me. Then thinking I'll return it, he kicks it across. Then, with a life of its own, the ball rolls down the hill, parallel to our garden wall. There, where the garden wall finishes, it rests in the gateway to an untended allotment. Inside the gateway, exuberant weeds, extravagant Brussels sprouts. I pick up the ball, run back up the hill, kick it over. Phil returns it. Again, it rushes by, decides now to travel past the allotment, rounding the turn at the bottom of the hill, and then it waits on the edge of ferns and nettles, near the furry hollow tree. It's been growing for a few hundred years. It shades Hector on his way home, and Dr. Corner trundling to and from his church. It will shade any singular body, even those tinged with the guilty safety of living 30 miles north of that capital city, for 30 miles south in that capital city, during air raids, bombs dive to suffocate the sky, to wound the earth. Back up the hill once more. If I kick the ball correctly, Phil Watkins might fall in love with me. He might want to marry me. This is the afternoon of my beginnings. This is the first afternoon of Mam allowing me out. You are never to go out. If you go out, your wound won't heal. So I lie on my black iron bed in my back bedroom, days packed with the mystery of new things installed within the house since I've been away in hospital. There's a new green carpet that snakes up the stairs. Unlike the leftovers from Mrs. Colonel Probert, this green snake covers the vertical as well as the horizontal. Horizontal to vertical, vertical to horizontal is how that stairs understands itself. And then in Mam's front bedroom, orange calico curtains flood the room with calico light. Mam's white bedspread is an orange countryside, Pillows are a calico mountain, and this mountain rises precisely, exactly right. Best of all, at the bottom of the stairs, a beaded curtain. Coming at it, it is multicolored tassels with tassels. And it doesn't have to be cajoled into parting. Automatically throngs sweep forward along, up from the kitchen, down from the stairs. Food too. Tins of vegetable, usually peas. Tins of meat, usually spam. Dried eggs, condensed milk, all with coloured labels. Now possibly and probably this is war charity. I heard on the radio in the hospital all about war charity. Also I know recent battles have been won. But then at night I hear a voice. This voice of me in the dark house will light up lights. This voice will hold me. This voice could be a father. This father could be a lover, could be followed out of the valley of the shadow, up into the mountains surrounding Greece. This voice will have to be searched for up at the bus stop, down at the hut ground, inside the church. When Mam allows me out, the place I am to go to is the church. You are never to go up the road. Go down to the church where I can see you. Look around the graveyard. Wait for me to come and get you. Time will pass quickly if you behave yourself. Inside the churchyard gate, I should walk up the drive, through the lavender avenue, into the graveyard proper, where ancient gravestones are fearfully conscious of their subsidence into the soft earth. The bull will look over the wall of its stall to read inscriptions, but try as it might, a bull can't decipher, so it'll make up a song. I'll eat hay while the sun shines. If I make a noise after the sun sinks, the owl from the yew tree will sweep down and peck out my eyes. Oh, instead of playing ball with Phil, I should be down at the church. But the afternoon village is pulsing with the hope that I make Phil my friend. As I come up the hill, I see another figure. It is Hector. Hector is sitting on the wet stone intended for water buckets. He turns on the tap, empties water over his head that he's collected in his hand. He is due to be chiseled because he's a block of rock from the granite quarry. Sitting here as he sits on his tractor, waiting to be witnessed. Alone with another, he'll use his mouth to kiss. In company, his mouth only eats, only breathes, only speaks. Playing football, are you? Who is asking this question? It is Hector. Yeah. Phil is kicking the ball back and fro against the sidewall of our house. I go across. And as I arrive at the spot where Phil could pass me the ball and I could pass the ball back, Hector comes from behind. He picks me up. His arms around the middle of me, forcing breath down into my stomach, up to my throat. Underneath the soles of my feet, Hector kicks the ball back to Phil. He puts me down, goes back to his rock. Can't get at the ball, can you, fella? But of course I can't get at the ball if you pick me up. I go back towards Phil, hoping an afternoon spirit will instruct Hector to follow. He does follow. He does pick me up again. The simplicity of this act is designed to be repeated, except when the ball rolls down the hill, he follows after. Well, hell, I can't tell if he's following after or pell-mell walking off. He's gonna go past the allotment, past the hut ground, past the hollow tree, past the church. He's gonna lock himself in his farmhouse because life outside is too heavy with choices. Momentarily, I settle on a large decision. I'll alter Hector's reasoning. I'll mold his torments. I'll refashion his concerns. Purposefully, the ball rolls beyond Hector to lodge once again in the entrance of the allotment. Speaking in general, gates are 5-bar wood, 5-bar iron. The iron of iron gates to private houses is fashioned into crosses, but not this twig wooden fabrication, noticeably intricate, noticeably weak, never to be passionate against, never to be lovingly lent on. Therefore, we are forced to stand front to each other's front, without support, listening, our blood cells whispering, enjoy this chaos, it is indigenous, it is to be endured. Looking at Hector, there is the top of his dark hair with no parting. There is the wonder of his being older, yet shorter, me younger, yet taller. His hands on my waist, not 2 hands round his shoulders, touching the broadness, his muscles getting stronger, me discombobulating, yet becoming what I am. Hey fella, better tell Phil you don't want to go on playing football. Hey Phil, your ball's in the gateway of the allotment. Better come and get it. And Phil recedes into the past, even as he advances to get his ball. I pull Hector to the bottom of the hill, drag him around the corner, away from the one window in the one small house that overlooks, a square-foot pane under the eaves, all eye, all glass, all light, all ray, whereas in the quiet afternoon, not a wave of sound. I drag Hector through the gap beside the furry hollow tree into the hut ground. Like the summer grasses, we are full of seed, yet powdery. Since the outbreak of war, we have not been pruned. Down in the delightful grass, plants are smothered, yet a sunflower and a blue foxglove stretches up to embrace a sequel to their blossoming, or is it a prequel to their getting old? Hector walks ahead to where the hut ground's ground slants away from the village, out of sight. A brook, a river, a sun, a pond, a group of moorhens, a railway bridge, a railway line. Watch Hector take off his trousers, then his underpants, till on the slanting bank in the long grass, the raw length of him is instantly supportive to his cock. This man thing of him, not designed for self-sufficiency, is happy with my company. Ready, fella? I'm going to put this inside you. It'll fill you up. When I get this inside you, I will be the man really meant for you. I am a scruffy soldier Hector is a warrior, the only available hero on this bank. Can you feel me? Yeah. Don't know when you're inside me, his man-thing thrusts in a pond-lodged situation located down between my legs, nowhere near what is referred to as my behind, other times spoken of as my arse. Nevertheless, he's wonderfully lunging. How far inside? In my stomach. In your stomach, Jesus Christ. And both of us are insanely excited by my lies. He turns me over. I'm spidery. My legs are in the air. Now do you feel a difference? The sky leers and peers. The soft ground heaves. I'd say, yeah, I feel a difference. And in truth, there is a tunneling in my fundament, but I'm unsure if Hector is tunneling into my stomach or into my mind. Ecstasy knocks out my eyes, covers up my ear holes. Intermittently and painfully, I am deaf and blind. On the slant, on a wild bank, I belong to the peasantry, a heap of a peasant lying on the slant, on a bank in slanting Wales. When I maneuver down under his lovely body, it is my mouth that is looking. My mouth searching Hector's hairy lollopy slollops, his slollopy hairy lollops, related to the allotment's knobbly sprouts. I suppose you want to kiss them. I suppose you want to lick them. And I lick them with the tongue that lives in the cavity of my largest mouth. A nearby dandelion ascertains degrees of pleasure. Pretended pleasure is the same, only different, is what this dandelion believes it has discovered, is what this dandelion believes it's found out.
Thank you all for coming. There's books for sale in the other room.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so attentive.
Yay.
Thank you.